would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Gundungurra land and people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you, our listeners, are joining us from today. I recognise the deep connection that First Nations people have to this land, their enduring culture, and their commitment to the preservation and care for their country. This land was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Beyond the Surface. This is a space for conversations that sit at the edges of faith, identity, power, and recovery, especially for those of us who have been shaped, stretched, or harmed by fundamental religion or high control systems. Some episodes are personal, some are reflective, some are educational or curious or quietly disruptive. All of them are grounded in lived experience and a deep respect for the complexity of leaving, questioning, and rebuilding meaning. We will be talking about religious trauma, various forms of abuse, cult dynamics, queerness, and recovery, not in neat answers, but in honest conversations. In listening to these conversations, some parts might be heavy or activating for you. Please take care of yourself while listening and feel free to pause or step away if you need to. I'm Sam, and I'm really glad that you're here with us. Welcome, Louise. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am always super grateful when people entrust me and my podcast for the first time that they are speaking publicly about their story, and that is what today is. And so I'm always grateful for the privilege that that is to have. Before we get into your story, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Melbourne or Naarm and in living on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country in like Melbourne's northeast.
Beautiful. I was in Melbourne only a couple of weeks ago, actually, on a little 10-day holiday, which was lovely. The weather did not rain the entire time we were there, which was good. I always expect it to just be like four different seasons in one day in Melbourne, so, but it was pretty good. It's a beautiful place. Um, Okay, I know that you have listened to previous episodes, so I know that you will know what my very first question is, which is nice and broad and vague for a reason. But where does your story start?
Yeah, I only landed on my answer this morning.
I mean, that's better than other people, and it's better than the first time I was asked the same question. So
It's being born, raised, and identifying as female in a patriarchal world.
it's fun time, hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you born into a faith-based family?
Catholic family, I would say cultural Catholic, probably. Yeah,
Okay.
So I went to Catholic parish primary school and did all the sacraments. Took on a saint's name as my confirmation, and and I went to Catholic girls' school. Um, for my secondary school. So
What was your saint's name? Do you remember?
Monique, I
Oh.
chose it because I like the name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good name.
Saint
Um,
Augustine's mother.
yeah, right. Okay. Nice. I mean, I was going to say, I don't even know who that would have been. And I went to a Catholic primary school as well, but it's a cool, more modern name, so I can understand why you might have picked it.
Yeah.
What was life like I guess what we would call like cultural and nominal Catholic family? What did that look like?
So my dad, when he grew up, he grew up in a Croatian family, and they were the largest migration ever out of Australia
Oh, wow.
post World War II. So his dad came over in the 1920s, and they went back to help rebuild. And so his dad was communist, and just when as soon as they got on the boat, they realized, what that meant with respect to how it was playing out with lack of freedom. So, like, they weren't allowed off, the port in India, so they were stuck on the boat for weeks and weeks. So basically, yeah, they became Catholic, I suppose, as a the opposite of what they were, like as a rebound.
Yeah.
And then and my mum, her you know, she was like Irish Catholic was one side and English Protestant the other, and but yeah, so that she was raised Catholic. Yeah.
And so was like faith a big part of your childhood, or was it just that church was kind of in the background?
Yeah, faith was. I remember, just really liking like my first communion day, getting to wear a
Mm.
nice white dress and
Yep.
this little floral wreath on my head, and had a big party, and yeah, so it was something, yeah, it was part of my identity, yeah, and part of like, we went to church every Sunday, and
Mm.
yeah. But also, like, one of the things I can remember, like, this was another part where where does my story start? One of my other answers might have been this one that when I was little, I had this, I don't know what age I was, but I had this philosophy of life that I said, Dad shouts at mum, mum shouts at my sister shouts at my brother shouts at my brother shouts at me. I shout at my dog Mitch. Mitch
Mm.
shouts at Mandy. Mandy shouts at the fish, and the fish talk to God.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of shouting.
Yeah.
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 What did that feel like? Where did that philosophy come from, do you think? Like, where did that sit for you?
Yeah, so yeah, my growing up in the family, so there was abuse there. I
Mm.
didn't really sort of see a whole lot. There was a lot of, there was aggro. I didn't see a whole lot of like, instances. There was one time I saw my dad pushing my mum, and that's really, stuck with me and was a real, pivotal moment in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. What did and because I often talk where, you know, teenage years is such a pivotal part of our life. It's where we identity build, it's where we start to make friendships, it's where we start to see people who we are attracted to, it's where we start to form relationships and all of that sort of thing. And so what was that like for you with the Catholic twinge, so to speak, on top of it?
Well, I was one of the ones that, I don't know, maybe it was a late 80s, 90s thing, but we were like drinking really early.
Yep.
We, we were, car parks of Red Rooster, rotundas in gardens, parks, drinking vanilla essence, like the amount of risk we took. And,
Yeah.
from 14 onwards, pretty much, yeah. And
Yeah.
like it was, like kissing boys was, a badge of honor. At some point, not too early, and then also not going too far as well. So there was a bit of a code of like you could misbehave, but it had, pretty firm boundaries.
Yeah. Was that given explicitly to you, or was that just sort of like something that you just knew?
Oh, I just knew I picked it up. Like,
Yeah.
I kissed a boy in year seven, and apparently that was too early. I copped a lot of backlash.
Okay.
But later on, like on New Year's Eve, people were having competitions, probably like year 10 or 11, of how many boys they could kiss. So yeah.
Ah, right. The good. I love how as teenagers we had a knack of being able to turn everything into a competition. I don't know quite how we did it, but we did. Everything was a game. Everything had like a hierarchy or a tally attached to it.
Yeah,
Some good, some not so good.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah. Now I know that a good part of your story is actually less about your childhood and less about your Catholic upbringing and more about a little bit later when you might have met someone in particular. So, what is the gap between where we're talking now and when that happened?
Sure. So I met, yeah, this person in like, I was in my early 20s,
Okay.
and I had my first career job in the city, and uh, I met him at work. Yeah, he came to say hello. He was in another area of like another sort of directorate of the organization, and he came in looking for some. No, I think no. Sorry, I was upstairs talking to somebody, and he came in and it was very charming and lovely. And
Mm.
I was on the 17th floor then, and then I went back to the office of the 12th floor and said, a lot of the people were female. I said, "Oh, you've got to, girls, you've got to do whatever you do, you've got to go up to the 17th floor and see this hottie."
Like every good mid-20 girl should do.
Yeah. And then we had like after work drinks on the Friday nights in the city. So that was probably where yeah, that started. I was actually in a relationship with somebody else. So it was a long distance relationship with a man from Zimbabwe. And
Okay.
I'd met him over there volunteering. And he was Black African, Shona. And I had a lot of backlash from my family for it. And so I sort of had to, like, I had applied for a visa, fiance visa,
Yeah.
and I was still living at home, but I, didn't tell my parents that. And, my mum had said, she wasn't supportive of it in like the strongest terms she could. And so, yeah, it was been a long time since I'd seen him, and I was starting to have doubts, and because it'd been such a long, like he'd been accepted through his visa, like he was up to the medical part,
Yeah.
and I was having doubts, and I was like at the with the immigration laws, I was thinking, oh gosh, if I end it for whatever reason in the first few years, then he has to go home.
Mm.
And we loved each other, but we were, thinking of marrying a lot for the reasons of him to come here. And
Yeah.
then I just felt that responsibility that it shouldn't have to be like that. I was sort of across with the laws of the country, but also like just felt that weight and going, I don't think that's sort of a really, good foundation.
Mm.
And so, yeah, this guy that I met, he, came from, middle class eastern suburbs, Melbourne, had
Hmm.
gone to a private school. So, he ticked those boxes with respect to acceptability and
Okay.
yeah, with my family. Yeah. So
Was the disapproval from your family around this other person's race? Like, was
yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah. And also his at that point his, socioeconomic status. And
Okay.
they were worried that he was using me and all that. And then, we'd looked at him coming over to study here. He'd been accepted to a course.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that. Yeah, a lot of race and he didn't come from money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you used a particular word for this new person that's being introduced to the story, and most of my listeners will always recognize the word charming is not always a good thing
Yeah.
when we use the word charming.
Mhm.
And so, what was, I guess, the beginning part of you getting to know this person like?
Yeah, it was fun. There was like lots of after work drinks in the city, going nightclubs and dancing and drinking and yeah, there was a point probably 5 months after I'd first met him, and it was a turning point in my life because we were at this nightclub where and dancing, and I knew like it was probably inevitable we could both make the choice to kiss each other, and I had this like moment where I'm like, this is a fork in the road for my life because I know that by choosing to kiss him, it's going to end like the relationship that I, with the man from Africa.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't know what would happen, that with the person I was going to kiss, like what would happen with my life with him. But I just knew that I was choosing to end the other relationship by kissing
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna give, I guess, a little like spoiler for some context for people listening that the person we are talking about becomes your husband, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. So, I guess like give a bit of a picture of those early days of your relationship with him.
Mhm.
And now I don't remember directly from our previous conversation, but was he already a part of the group we are going to talk about, or was he join it?
He grew
Okay,
up in it. Yeah, yeah.
right. Okay.
And so, yeah, we were very passionate, attracted to each other.
Yeah.
And then he invited me to go to his church.
Hmm.
And so I went there, and, everybody was really friendly. And yeah, it was very different to the Catholic church that I'd grown up with. And yeah, it was, to me, I felt like it was real, like the people were friendly, but the church was really like, I know, old building, and they were singing all these hymns that were like hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
And so, and then that journey of like continuing to go to that church, it was really interesting how Catholics were perceived as well, because they think that, Catholics are all, they're more progressive, I suppose, in that because they split, in the hundreds of years ago. But, in reality, because the Catholic Church sort of went to English in the 60s, all the hymns and songs were heaps more modern. And so I just felt like I was, yeah, going back in time.
Yeah.
And yeah, all these, 400, and everybody knew the, the tune. And like the Catholic books had all the notes and how long you hold it and everything. Theirs just had the words, and
Yeah.
everybody, and the organists and the choir, and then everyone, like families had their rows as well. Like that was really weird. Like when
Yeah.
you sat. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, and okay, because like a lot of people are probably thinking, okay, the Catholic Church is probably not the most modern, particularly when it comes to music. So to be referring to Catholic music and spaces as the more modern of the two probably says a lot. What flavor of church are we talking about here?
Yeah, they were Presbyterian,
Okay.
and yeah, they had also some sort of exclusive invite-only groups as well that were happening at that time for young men and young women. I was never invited to any of them, but there were like lots of church activities. Like there was a weekly prayer night, and there was an evening service on the Sundays, and afterwards. This was another thing that was really different to me. Like everybody stayed for like hours afterwards. Hours.
Yes.
Like in the Catholic Church, probably some people even just took the communion and run. Like,
Yes.
no one no one chatted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's like the big community-esque kind of space. It sounds like,
yeah.
everybody knows everybody, everybody's connected to everybody, everybody interacts with everybody. And so did it feel quite potent that you were the new person in that space when you went with him? Like, did you feel like the new person who didn't really know everything that was happening?
Yeah, look, I people were really friendly.
Yeah.
The one thing that was hard was a big thing, that when we were at the church, he was very distant to me.
Ah,
So he would be very, um, you know, intimate and charming, and, like lots of PDA, public displays of affection in the work setting. We'd go down to have lunch on the banks of the Yarra and
mm.
kiss in the grass and all. But
Yeah.
he would barely acknowledge me at the church. So yeah, so what happened was, I don't know, a couple of months after I started going, he broke up with me.
Okay.
And yeah, there was a point where like I wanted to keep going,
Mm.
and my mum was going, "Oh, you look so silly and desperate. Why are you going if you're not with him
Oh,
anymore?" And I'm like, "Well, I really like it. I want to keep going." So
yeah.
I made that decision, and yeah, it was really hard. But then also, even though we weren't technically going out, there was still at that work setting, it was pretty similar.
Yeah.
We were still, yeah, kissing, and it was doing my head in.
I was going to say it sounds awfully confusing and
Yeah.
like And yeah. I am curious out like separate to him just for a second, which was like you were enjoying this space, you were enjoying this church, this community, and so I'm known for asking double-barreled questions, so here's one. What was your sense of faith and who God was during that time, and what was it about the community that you were enjoying?
Mm. So I I'd always like, had that faith in God. I felt like people, yeah, they had a lot more zeal about it. They read the Bible, and I went to young adults Bible study, and
Yeah.
people were excited and passionate about it, and a whole new world was opened up. Like I really got into Keith Green, and
Oh, wow. That is a voice. That's a name I have not heard for a very long time.
yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and just yeah, people were really friendly. Like people were going out quite young and getting married young. We all know why. You
Yes.
don't want to have sex sooner. So, legitimately. So,
Like good Christians do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, yeah, sorry, continue.
Oh, yeah. So it was really, and the people, like, yeah, they were passionate, and I felt, and I was seeing the pastor as well, like having conversations with him about my faith journey as well, and what I was grappling with, and I remember when I was having a chat with him, reading Psalm 51
Mm,
about David, and that I suppose a part of where I felt, I needed to be clean, or, forgiveness was around my sexual history. And I felt that was, yeah, forgiven and white as snow, all that. So,
mm.
yeah.
And was that the kind of theology that you were being presented with? Like that sort of very like purity led, like um were you taught like very fear-based sort of like salvation, hell, that sort of all of those sort of benchmarks that I talk about with most
Yes,
people on
very
here?
much, very much.
Yeah.
And the husband is the head of the
Yes.
household, and
Traditional gender.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And the quiet and gentle spirit of the wife, and yeah.
How did all of those things sit with you? Did they just feel okay, or was there a part of you even at the time that was like,
Yeah, look, it was difficult because, I'd gone to uni, and I fully believe in evolution, and I always have,
yeah,
always will. And so I was not going to budge on that. Like, that sort of, yeah, the belief in the, 7-day creation, 6,500 years ago.
yep,
Yeah, but with the role of women, like, I suppose it was more about if the husband was a really good guy, then they wouldn't go against the wife anyway, and like,
yeah,
he'd have that final say, but really, like, it would be a journey of grappling, and till they got a consensus. So yeah, that was, yeah, how I sort of was trying to think about it in my head around all that. Yeah.
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 It's always so interesting to hear all of the different ways that we used to make sense of things that didn't necessarily make sense to us on the surface. Like
Mm,
I use the term mental gymnastics where we sort of like try to make things make sense. And I'm sure that that will probably continue to come up as we
mm.
continue talking. But um, when does old mate come back into the story?
Yeah, so I continued to go to the church and continued to like have this, yeah, the cognitive dissonance around what it
Yeah,
was like at work versus what it was like at church.
yeah,
I was really, yeah, always just thinking about him, and I suppose obsessed by him. I couldn't really move on. And yeah, then we got back together probably. There was another time we got back together for a few months and then broke up. And then the last time was around the time. that I became a member of the church. So, you know,
Ah.
I had the approval of the church, basically, the
Yeah.
stamp.
Yeah, I was about to say the stamp of approval, you ticked the final box, so to speak, it sounds like.
Yeah,
But I mean, like that yo-yoing of like together, not together, together, not together, that would have been like an emotional roller coaster, I imagine, for you.
yeah, it
Um,
was really hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so once you got that stamp of approval, what was the trajectory like from there?
So that was, I'm very chronological, so I'll just say
Oh,
months.
that's okay.
So that was in February of a certain of a year, and
Yeah.
then June. Oh, then he had left the workplace that we'd met at, and he'd gone into consultancy, and that hadn't really worked out. So he then got a job in Gippsland,
Right.
and he was coming back on the weekends, and he asked me to move there, and I'm like, nah, not without a ring on my finger, like no way.
Yep.
And so then in that was probably April that he moved, and then in June he proposed, and it was yeah, I was really happy, and then we had a 3 month engagement. So September we got married, and then I moved down then.
Always a very fast trajectory in these episodes when we talk about marriage, typically,
Yeah.
because of, and there's so many factors as to what that is. But I mean, I mean, what we're talking about is like what an 8 month period of time where you went from, finally getting together to proposed to married. Did that at any point ever feel rushed to you, or did it just feel okay and right?
It felt like it had taken forever to get to that point because
Yeah,
it had been like 3 years of
the
like just
yo-yos.
being strung along. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, And so how was, I guess, all of that framed within the church? Was it like this big celebratory thing? Was there anything that you needed to do? Some spaces require, particular rituals or anything that you needed to
Hmm.
do to feel like you were actually part of that community and a member of the
Yeah.
church.
Well, one thing was I didn't have to get baptized again, which was a good thing.
Okay.
They recognized that my Catholic baptism and an infant baptism.
Ah,
And with respect to leading up to getting married, we had to do the pre-marriage
yeah.
counselling. And, one of the things was around, how many kids we'd have. And, you know, I think
Yeah.
he said 12 and I said five. And
Wow.
yeah.
12.
Yeah. It
Gracious.
was it was a lot of joking, but yeah, I was well, and I was looking at, I was definitely thinking about, that I wouldn't work and that I would be the primary caregiver for the period of time with the kids, till they all, however many kids we had, till they all went to school. Yeah, and with the wedding, like. I remember one thing, like, because yeah, like they wouldn't let me have one of the songs that I wanted to walk into, and because it was deemed too Catholic.
Oh, yes, because I mean, I mean, even in the church that I was in, Catholics are not real Christians. So, like, yes, I can understand.
Yeah, and then yeah, so and then I wanted to choose hymns, and there was a really, oh, that's not a hymn, that's a song, like, being told off about, certain that a hymn can only be, I think it's, Protestant thing, written by a dead white guy. So yeah.
Him can only be written by a dead white guy is probably one of my favorite things I've heard. Um, that's so good. Had you ever noticed any of those controlling aspects before as to what you were allowed to do and not allowed to do? Or was this like the first moment where you really noticed some of those things?
Oh, look, the prayer meetings were, I noticed it then. Like there was a lot of control. And they would pray a lot about uh, like the church service, and like they're very insular. That's what struck me, like as
Mm,
well. Because growing up Catholic, I've always loved that social justice lens, and
yeah.
like that continues to motivate me, and doing things for people just because it's a good thing, not with you can only do it if you accept Jesus or you know, feign that you're going to. So, yeah, that was very inshallah. Like the most outward looking thing they did was at that time was I think they wrapped Christmas presents at a local market. That was and then later on they held a children's fair, but most of their prayer was about everyone in that church and also praying for revival. That was a really, really big thing. So the founding people had gone over to some Pacific Islands years before
Mm.
and as missionaries and there'd been a revival there. And so they came back to you know eastern suburbs Melbourne, completely different with this invigorated with their experience and then always like praying for revival in you know in our city.
Okay. How did some of that, I guess, the control and the being quite insular or exclusive, how did some of that sit with you?
Well, they welcomed people in, like I think marrying in
Okay.
was accepted. So,
Right.
and then there was a lot of, you know, relatives and families. Yeah, it was, I suppose I just felt accepted and that they were passionate. So I could, yeah, I could, all the things that were like, some things made me uncomfortable, but they were just so happy and loving and like to their own.
Yeah.
And once you're in there, so yeah, you know, it felt really good. Yeah, like what
Yeah.
you know, knows love bombing and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as humans, we're hardwired for connection. We want that place of belonging. And it's why so many of us, like, I think if I had asked literally every single person on that I've interviewed so far, I think everybody would probably say the same thing, which was that that sense of belonging was what allowed us to make sense of things that didn't make sense, stay in places that didn't necessarily feel supportive or safe for us because we belonged, and that's the power of community, I think, right? So
Mm, mm,
it's um, it's a bit of a tightrope, I think, of space.
mm.
Um, Now, most people would say that things don't really change once you get married, that it's just, not, it's just a piece of paper. It just means that now you might share the same last name and you live in the same house and all of those sorts of things. Would you say that nothing changed once you got married?
Uh, No, a lot did, like, because it was what marriage meant,
Yeah.
like what it meant to me. I suppose, you know, a relationship as a little girl, you know, seeing the Disney fairy tales, the society that, you know, tells you that that's what you should look for and aim for.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I also always knew that I wanted to have kids, marry and have kids from a young age. So, yeah, it was. And then, you know, we moved though as well, like, and that was really good in that we left that church. Like that was probably the only way we would have left that church,
Okay.
because we had to, because we were living somewhere else. But also it meant that we didn't have a community, didn't have family, didn't have friends. So we were really isolated. And yeah, like because like there were family members that had experienced or that you know weren't no longer in the church and you know were being shunned and I knew you know those stories and I was sad about them and those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just yeah knew that sorry, also there were family members on my side that had said, I just remember one person in particular saying this would be the best way to start your marriage because you'll be able to establish your own identity as a couple
Uh-huh.
and not have other people there because that's what had happened with her. She'd traveled a lot with her husband. And from the stories of like the family members in the church that, you know, had experienced control and had left, and there was some acknowledgement that you know, because there was a lot of control there, like around at this church that we left, like who you could marry, what job you could have, and
Mm.
all that. Like it was really like there were elders, and you were assigned an elder.
Yeah.
And you know, I read a book that about some of the stories, and I've heard them, firsthand as well. Like, whether married couple, whether they're allowed to go on holiday or not. So the person hasn't got a good feeling that God's telling them not to go, and
Yeah.
um, everybody has to walk in the light, and
Yeah.
yeah. So,
All of the rules.
so in one sense, being away from that and knowing some of the stories or I suppose lessons learned was that um, I probably thought it was a good thing to not have too much control from people from the church and outside, and that there'd been a history of people like crossing those boundaries between a husband and a wife before. So that was sort of what I was like, no, this needs to be a really tight boundary between us and not let people in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it's it's tricky because I know that, like you said, that your now husband grew up in this space. And so it's very easy, I see this happen all the time in other conversations and stories, but even with clients where we see the indoctrination and the control and the traditional gender roles and all of that sort of thing spill over into other spaces of our world, and we take that into other relationships and other spaces. And so, how did you see that play out in your family, especially considering the level of isolation that you were now having away from that community?
Yeah, so when you say my family, do you mean my family of birth or
No,
like
no,
all
no. So,
around the family?
like yeah, so your new family
New
that you,
family, yeah, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so I just, yeah, we were getting to know new people or finding a new church,
Yeah.
and we were, and when you talked about marriage, like what it meant, like, we'd made a promise to God,
Mm.
and there was the three, the chord of three. I can't remember
Yep.
exactly.
Yes.
So
You, the husband
yeah,
and God. Yes.
yeah. So and then I was just trying to live the dream, I suppose. I could um, finally, we could legitimately be together and have that approval from everybody. So yeah, it was. And then we went to a Dutch Reformed church, which was fairly similar, like the Calvinist
Yeah.
philosophy. Met a lot of nice Dutch people who were dairy farmers in that area. And they were still similar, like beliefs, theology and all that. Went to a Bible or a small group and made some really good friends. But yeah, that's in that first year was when it's a physical abuse started. So I didn't. There wasn't any way I could tell anyone about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did that um did that come as a surprise to you?
It did the particular moment it did because it was about something that was really, silly. It was
Yeah.
about me using all the carrots when I was cooking dinner.
Yeah.
He didn't want me to use the carrots, and I'm like, this is really silly. What's he going on about? And so I used all the carrots, and he came over. Like we had this open plan kitchen, and he was sitting down watching telly, and I was standing in the kitchen cooking the meal, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so he wasn't happy about that, and came over and yeah, pushed me up against a wall and was just like pinning me there and
Mm.
glaring at me. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty full on, and like in that moment, I didn't know what to do, and yeah, it was just such a shock, and
Yeah.
having um, you know seen that experience of my childhood, like seeing what I'd witnessed, like going, oh my gosh, I've chosen that. How's this happened to me now? Like, yeah.
It was automatically your fault. Like you had sometimes we see that come out, it transitions into that, but it sounds like for you that blame as to like you had put yourself in this situation was almost there immediately.
Yeah, yeah. But I at that point though, like it was it was just something I had to, like, I was devastated about, and I had to, like, get over it, I suppose. And but I couldn't tell anyone about it, so I think I went out to the, I went to the local supermarket and got some more carrots
Yeah.
because I'm like, it's what's the big deal about, these
Yeah.
carrots? They were 99 cents, and I went and got some carrots. So
Yeah.
it was yeah, and I just couldn't, yeah, that was hard, like just not being able to tell anybody about. And then, there were also just being on eggshells then, that wow, like not predicting when it could happen and all that. And one of the things around like his childhood and his experience in the church was that he had also been on the outer as well, like as in he hadn't been invited to the exclusive groups. Um, so it can be, there's lots of, bad things that happen when you're in those groups.
Yeah.
But then when you're also not in them, that feeling of exclusion and insecurity and I'm not good enough. And then he'd also experienced bullying in his childhood, in his teen years.
Yeah.
And so that made him it really affected him. And like knowing that story about him as well,
Mm.
I felt for him. I had empathy because he was a hurt person, hurt people. And he also had mental health issues as well and was often suicidal. So, in one sense, I'm experiencing something and then he's feeling bad about it, but then I'm also really worried about him and his mental state.
Yeah.
And, you know, um, leaving him was so not in my head for years and years and years because,
Yeah.
of how much marriage meant to me and how much, I was worried about him and I loved him and there were good times as well. So, yeah.
And I think that's sometimes the hardest thing for so many people, whether it be, abuse in a relationship or abuse in a church or something, is that there are sometimes good parts. And that can be really, I mean, that's sometimes part of the confusion as to whilst we're
Mm.
even still in those spaces is, that those good parts that are part of that cycle that we often talk about. But um, a lot of people, unless you've experienced abuse in a particular space, don't understand that we can still sit here and go, but there were good parts. And that can
Mm, mm.
be confusing to a lot of people. Um, so you hinted that this marriage continued for years, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. So we lived in regional Victoria for a few years. Part of my job was I worked with young mums. We did pram walking groups.
Yeah.
I was in health promotion, and I would see that a lot of the mums were not from that area and they felt really isolated
Mm.
and not having, yeah, somebody nearby I could, look after the baby while they went food shopping or go get their hair cut, go to the gym, all that sort of stuff. So I'm like, I saw that isolation and, I also probably know myself, not happy with
Yes.
what was going on, was
Yeah.
like, I need my family nearby. So I was really keen, that we moved back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we did. And, his work as well, like he'd changed careers and there wasn't sort of much happening for him in that area. He was having to travel a lot. So that sort of made sense for him as well, like I suppose, which brought him along because he always loved living there. And years later, was like, why did you make us move back and all that? But at that time, his work also meant that we, needed to move back. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to be back with family.
Mm.
Um, we some friends who had left that church as well were going to a Pentecostal church. Oh,
Mhm.
and in between that, when we'd gone to a Baptist church before we moved back to Melbourne, and then started going to a Pentecostal church, and It was great to be back with some friends who had been at the old church and, have that. We really liked the worship and
Yeah, the music
yeah.
would have been wildly different.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And yeah, like it's that focus on, the gifts and you know, I look back now, I also thought like, can be quite performative
Oh, yeah.
and my ex, he got a lot of esteem, I suppose, that I
Mm.
think, any guy in a church gets a gold medal just for turning up.
Yep.
And when you're in you turn up to a church and all that. Like I would see, this is later on when we moved as well. Like when you're being welcomed, you can just they all just gravitate to the guy and shake the hands, and you're like this weird appendage. Like, they may acknowledge you, they may not. So yeah, you see the status that's given there.
Mm.
And if you sort of, prostrate yourself on the floor during worship, or if you respond to a worship call, or you're speaking in tongues, like if like all that you're sort of seen as spiritual, then everybody just assumes you're a great person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, throughout all of these changes, because one, it's just a lot of moving, which is a lot of change. It's a lot of very different flavors of Christianity and church styles and
Mhm.
different beliefs, different perspectives, different opinions. And so, what was I mean, and that's hard enough as it is, I think, is all of that change. But how did all of that then interact and translate to how you were experiencing life at home? Like, who were you at home? Who were you in that relationship?
Yeah. Well, we started having, yeah, as I alluded to before, having kids. So
Mm.
that changed a lot with the expectations and role upon me. Yeah, I sort of talked about before that I sort of thought that I wouldn't work
Yeah.
during having the smaller kids, but with his career change, it meant that I needed to bring in the money. And look, I've always liked work. At some points it was part time, like it was 2 days a week, or it was point 0.5, 2.5 days a week. So yeah, that was in hindsight, it's good that I kept working because I kept being able to be independent and bring in some money. But yeah, there was a lot on me. But so getting the kids, you know, once after maternity leave, getting them to childcare and then getting them to school, getting them home, and like I was just too busy, like, and just surviving. And I would that constant sort of trying to be equal in or give ensure that he did some things. So like some things that I tried, like, was like to have a sleep in one morning of a weekend, like to take turns. And so then I could have a sleep in and he could, do the morning because the kids get up at like 5 o'clock or something. And
Yeah.
so this was sort of after, the breastfeeding and all that. So, but what he would do is he'd lie on the couch and then sort of half look after them, but then go back to bed for the rest of the day. And then it would be stuck with me. So I learnt that, like, I would sort of be punished for asking for him to do stuff, because he would do it, but then he'd protest and make me pay later. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there'd be things like, he was really wanted to do stuff around the house. He wanted to spend time in the garden, and he'd start these projects that were big, that would like need him to spend time on it. Like he did crazy paving over a perfectly good footpath. And so for like 5 years, there was uneven footpath, which I would, you know, sprain my ankle on when I was pregnant and all that sort of stuff. Like, or we were living on a main road, and he started a fence, and then that took years as well. And so, like, he wanted to do it, but then also he'd want to, just relax after a hard week at work. And so then I would take the kids out for the day so he could do that project. And then I'd get home and he may have done something, he may not have.
Yeah.
And so it was all like very much all the kid stuff was on me, and
Yeah.
then he could do as he pleased. And yeah, I resented that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously mentioned like the physical violence that occurred in that first year, and did that continue? Did it escalate? Did it ever de-escalate? Were you constantly walking on eggshells this entire time?
Yeah, look, it was probably there'd be different times. It might be a few months in between something
Yeah.
physical. And yeah, but there was that coercive control, or, just with respect to, like, if the kids, I remember once, I had the kids after work, and I was doing that, they call it arsenic hour, the bath time, and they were all just screaming. And he was sleeping in bed because he'd been, tired from work. And I was doing all, and he got up and he was really cross with me that they were being too loud, and that, you know, why was I letting that happen? And then, he took the kids away from me and they were all screaming, and so because I couldn't, control them so that they weren't screaming, like, but then he comes out and then he withholds them, and so they felt, scared as well. So yeah, it was trying to protect them from it as well. Like, I would take the kids sometimes to my parents. Sometimes if they were in bed or something had happened, I'd leave. Sometimes he wouldn't let me leave, like he'd take the keys, and so he'd block me from leaving. I remember once that I was in, I think I was in like my, slippers or something, and he wouldn't let me leave. And I walked, I think 3.5 kilometers to my sister-in-law's house
Mm.
just to, have some time out, to
Yeah.
tell her. She'd actually witnessed it as well, like something where, when I was pregnant with my first child, and we had a disagreement about something. I wanted his help for something and he didn't want to do it, and I just went ahead and did it. So that's when it happened, when I was just like, stuff it, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And then he came and he pushed me. I was heavily pregnant, and yeah, I didn't actually remember until my sister-in-law told me years later that he pushed me hard enough that I fell over, but I didn't actually remember that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, and then just the shouting and, yeah, being angry and leave me alone, and yeah, and then sometimes with where he was at with his mental health, like worrying or wondering if he'd be alive when I got home. I just never felt like I could, like, I couldn't help him. Sometimes, so I reached out to his dad, and his dad would drop everything and come and, be with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'd get the help, and counseling sometimes, but only after a lot. Like, that would be some of my, what I'd say, in the aftermath, like, you have to go get counseling, this can't go on. And then, it might take weeks for him to get the appointment, and then he'd find a counselor and it wouldn't gel, or they'd gel with him and then he'd get challenged and he wouldn't like them anymore and end that.
Yeah.
And there were times that I had, like, I'd go along as well and I would disclose things. And yeah, like, I just look back going, like, when I've disclosed things, like, what was the duty of care of those people that heard things, and of what they'd say to me and to him. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, were you, and this is a weird question, but it might not be. Were you engaging with like actual counselors, like as in like trained licensed counselors, or were you engaging with like church pastoral counselors?
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mostly the church ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would not have, the highest qualifications.
Yes.
And I mean, that probably would be the only reason, though, that he would go, because
Yeah.
understanding, that worldview, and yeah, and that there'd be lots of, counselors that don't have that worldview, that wouldn't understand, would make you feel like, you're crazy because you have those beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so was the message from the church-based counselors was that to pray more? Was that to forgive? Was that to, you know, like spiritual answers, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. It was about like the couple counseling as well, like what we
Yeah.
could do with our evening routines. Yeah, so there was that. Like I remember, you know, that whole we got to make time for ourselves, and so we came up with this, and it was all this like really, stereotypical stuff like that the man doesn't want to talk to anyone when he gets home and he needs that half an hour to debrief, and yeah, the woman's got to, give him that space, and then I'm like, well, you need to let me talk, and like trying to find that middle ground, and then that like, well, who do you put first? Is it the kids or the husband? And you've got to put your husband first, and um, so how does that look with an evening routine? So like we'd try, and I remember there was one routine where it was like, by 8 o'clock, the goal was to have the kids
Yeah.
in bed, bath, dinner, bedtime stories, prayer, and all that.
Mm.
But he wouldn't really help me get to that point.
Yeah.
And then the kids would want me to stay for a bit longer. And then I'd get blamed for not putting him first or high enough because I'd, not met that 8 o'clock deadline.
Yeah.
So, but he wasn't really helping, or even if he was, he'd just be like, "Oh, stuff it," and I'd be left to deal with the consequences of how the kids were
Yeah.
and managing their emotions and where they were at. And then, but by that time, I was resentful and didn't want to spend that time with him. By the time
Yeah.
I was, yeah,
Yeah.
free to spend the time with him,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so, okay, another double-barreled question, which is how long were you married?
Mm.
Like what was that length of time? And during that, entire sort of like marriage, what was your relationship with God like? Because I know that it becomes very complicated when, you are taught that three-chorded marriage and yet there is abuse happening in this marriage. And why is God letting this happen? Kind of thing that happens for a lot of people. And so, what was that like for you for the length of time that you were married?
Yeah. Well, we ended up, so about, sorry, I'm going, so it's 12 years into the marriage was the first separation.
Okay,
And then we got back together, and so all up the marriage was 15 years.
okay.
And then yeah, so we separated in 2019 for good, November 2019, and then the pandemic happened.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, and yeah. So and then yeah, the so sorry, I know you might have to keep going back to what the questions were,
That's
but
okay. What
yeah,
was your relationship with God
yeah,
like throughout? Like, how
yeah,
did the impact of the abuse impact your relationship with God?
yeah, yeah. Well, I know, like I would after things happened, I would like leave and go and spend time in nature. And I know you talk a lot about that
Yeah.
with people, and yeah, so I really loved and connected with God in nature. So like I felt like He was the refuge for me. But
Yeah.
then like also this year, the forgiveness part of it, I just always grappled with that, and I call it the forgiveness paradox,
Mm.
because, yeah, particularly in an intimate partner relationship, yeah, it's like I was encouraged to forgive and forgive and forgive, and, like forgive 70 times 70,
Yeah.
always you got to forgive, um, and so I think that's, yeah, I find it really hard, and it's a little bit of a triggering word for me now.
Yeah.
Because, and I know, that whole, it can help you, the person who forgives and all that. I know all that part of it, but in terms of giving him that forgiveness,
Mm.
like I gave it to him over and over, and I resent that now. And then it, this was also from that church and the upbringing was that um, if I didn't forgive, like forgiveness looked a certain way,
Mm.
and if I didn't, for example, like within 2 minutes, forget about that it happened, and treat him like he was white as snow and, pure and I would be holding onto unbelief
Yeah.
and to pity, and it was my problem.
Yeah.
And he also like, yeah, the apology, I knew that like repentance, in talking about that in the church, they'd say to turn away, and
Mm.
that means that you should actually change your behavior.
Yeah.
And I knew that he wasn't, but then there was also that sometimes, when you yourself or you're in those church circles, there's like two types of transformation. There's you know, the one that happens in the moment where, somebody radically, for example, is not addicted to drugs anymore,
Mhm.
the radical one, or
Yep.
the gradual one. And
Yeah.
so I was praying for either, but I would prefer the radical one.
Yeah.
But then the gradual one, it means that like you might see someone change the next day. Like they're sorry, they're in the honeymoon phase, this abuse
Yeah.
cycle. And so yeah, you see that change. And then maybe the level of the abuse with respect to, oh, it wasn't a push, but it was a shout. So that's a gradual change. Like, so you're always holding on to this, with desperation that there's going to be a change and a permanent change and enough of a change, yeah,
Yeah.
for you to stay there. So yeah, and in the like I remember, I talked earlier about not, that holding it in, you're not telling people, and there is a shame of that, your dignity, that's happened to you.
Yeah.
And so there's that, just admitting that that's happened to you, but then also people's reactions.
Mm.
So, because, you can downplay it or gaslight yourself, but other people can do it as well.
Yeah.
And I, at the same time as going to church, was working in a sector which was, which was around, ironically, or maybe, it was just meant to be, but I was working in health promotion and our priority area when I came back from maternity leave in 2013 was prevention of violence against women.
Oh yeah, I would call that ironic. Or fate or serendipity or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it.
Yeah, yeah. So I was then in getting to learn about it and
Yeah.
what it looked like, and then having those moments. Oh, wow, that is me. I'm experiencing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talk so often. I talk about it with my clients. I talk about it on the podcast all the time about the power that when we have language for what we are experiencing, like true, correct, right language for what's been going on, the impact that that has. And so, what was the impact on you when you had language of love bombing, of gaslighting, of coercive control, of the cycle of abuse?
I didn't really have that language at that time, but
Yeah,
I was learning. Yeah, but I think I was just still a little bit like it's not happening to me. But
yeah.
but what I remember, so this was probably 2 years, 2 to 3 years after I'd started working in that field, and now I've got three kids, and we've yes, not still, bad relationship. There was this video that our at work that was playing, and it was about how to recognize the signs of abuse in a friend.
Um,
And I was animated, and I was looking at it going, "Oh my gosh, I'm that friend. That's me."
uh,
So, and then I kept on grappling with as well, like, is this enough for me to you know, leave a marriage. Like it just, there was such a big mountain. Like there was so long. Like it was just, I'm in it for life. Like it's
yeah,
another thing with loyalty is another triggering word to me because I was fiercely loyal, but it didn't serve me
yeah,
because I was just, staying there. Yeah. And like another, just phrase around with, the forgiveness and all that like he would say to me, and this was like after later after we'd separated, but he'd go, "Don't you believe in a redemptive Jesus?"
Oh,
So, so it's like, it's on me. Can't you believe that I've changed? So the first time, like the first separation, I might talk around like leading up to that. Like we were hosting a small group. Um, and actually, this is probably a year before, we went to a church marriage course called Love After Marriage. It was a Bethel church
mm-hmm.
course.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
don't know.
know of it, yes.
Yeah. And so it was a 13-week course. We got a young lady from church to a volunteer to look after our kids so we could go.
Yeah.
And what I was really hoping for was like, because I just kept on wanting to make it work. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix him. I wanted him to want to fix himself. And so, we would have these sort of small groups within that, and there was a topic each week, and we had some really good conversations in those groups. Um, yeah, and there were lots of things covered in that church course that might be talked about, maybe not from the pulpit, but explored or acknowledged in church that things are happening. So, there was an acknowledgement that affairs might happen, and that what I suppose, how people can forgive in that. There was acknowledgement that men might use pornography, and how that there were courses around that. There was one called Valiant Man, and personally, I really hated pornography, and found out that he was yeah, using it, and he denied it, and that was really hard for me. So yeah, that we went to this church course, and there were things like they were talking about like really intimate stuff, like the how to have a better sex life and all that things, but there was one mention, not one mention at all that abuse might be happening in the marriage.
Yeah.
And I just, I felt really sad about that. And the people that were leading it, they came over, they needed to check in with all the couples, and towards the end, and they came over, and I had sometimes, what I experienced from his behavior was Jekyll and Hyde. Like I just couldn't pick sometimes. Sometimes I could pick when he was upset, but sometimes, like that time with the carrots, I'm like, I
Yeah.
did not see that coming.
Yeah.
So I would sometimes just say, in the aftermath, stop being such Jekyll and Hyde and all that.
Yeah.
And so when they came over, I mean, I didn't tell them about what was going on, but I did tell them that I was saying, to him that he was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then I asked for forgiveness for putting that label on him. And so I didn't feel like I could talk about it. And then I'm taking it on that it's my problem because I'm putting it on him that he's like that. And so that's just so crazy.
Yeah, the twisting that happens is
Yeah.
is sometimes like the only word that comes to mind is that sometimes the twisting is absolutely ludicrous. Like it
Mm-mm.
just we cannot make sense of it. And I don't want to make sense of it because it doesn't make sense. But
Mm.
it is just absolutely ludicrous and so harmful
Mm.
for the person who is in your position in that situation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, there was the small group that we were leading. There was a couple in there that was separated, and um, I got to a bit of the story from the person, the woman, and there was some domestic violence going on, and she had told me about her experience of going to the church about it,
Mm,
and that she just felt like they didn't handle it well, and that they sort of wrapping their arms around him and wanting to support him, and how could he be better and turn around and all that stuff. So I think I was at that point thinking, you know, is this, I was probably starting to be open to a separation, and then I heard, that. So I'm like, okay, I took on that message then that, okay, I'm not hearing about it, that acknowledge that the church is not acknowledging that it's existing in their congregations. And then, like in general, like the soup that you're in. And then when people actually go and say there's a problem, then they don't handle it well.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I ended up, I Googled, the night before, it ended up happening, the first separation, about separating from a husband in Christian marriage, when it's emotional abuse,
Ah.
because I was like, okay, the physical stuff happens, but it's not that much.
Mm.
So, um, you know, should I end it just because it happens every now and then? And then when the emotional stuff happens and it's like the non-physical, is that enough? And so thankfully that particular article is saying, yes, it's enough.
Good. Good. Oh,
Because, I just didn't want to, that whole stigmatizing around, separation and divorce in the
yeah.
church and people meddling and assuming. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to avoid all that. And then, like, we were actually going to move back to regional Victoria. And because the price of real estate in Melbourne was outrageous, and we were going to move back, and we bought a house down there, and I'd was moving schools, all that sort of moving jobs, looking for jobs down there, and but then something in me was going, hang on, yes, you liked the beach, you liked the community, but you were isolated. So
Mm.
it sort of then brought me to that point of making the decision that I didn't want to move.
Yeah.
Like that's all the thing. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I don't want to move.
Mm.
And so yeah, one afternoon, on a Saturday, we'd also had a bit of a fight. I took the kids to a play centre
Mm.
and got on the phone to 1-800 Respect, and then they put me onto Safe Steps,
Okay.
and then Safe Steps offered me emergency accommodation,
Yeah.
and I didn't have. We just had the clothes on our back. I had, I think, my work laptop, and they'd said to me, "Oh, look, you don't have to make a decision to, finish things now, but it's like this is to give you space to think, because
Yeah.
you can't think, you can't have clarity in this situation." So
Mm.
there was no strings on it, and I'm
Yeah.
glad it was available because it's not available to everybody who needs it at the time they need it. But I was really glad I got offered that. And yeah, so they found out where I lived, and so I had the emergency accommodation, fair way apart from where I lived.
Yeah.
And then I got offered accepted into a refuge as well.
Mm.
And but my friend from church that I'd talked about, she'd gone to the police and got an order where like he was pretty much evicted from the house.
Mm.
So I was wanting to then follow that because
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, I don't want to go into hiding and um, give up my supports. I was, also making an assessment that I thought I was safe enough in that, like, you've got to make that assessment about, some women, yeah, they literally, that's their only choice so that they can stay
Absolutely.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what has the recovery been like for you since leaving that relationship? Just personally.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Can I just talk about going back? Is that all right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, I'll get to that.
sure.
So, I he moved back to his parents, and then but he didn't have the like to have the kids to run a household, do all that. So it was probably like he could do all the work he needed on himself, but
Mm.
then without all the life hassles, I suppose. So I did, he promised he'd changed. He wrote me these
Mm.
letters that, were proclaiming how he'd changed, and he had all these visions of like
Yeah.
scales falling off him. I don't know. Think of the book of Daniel,
Oh,
and
yes.
you'll all those visions, and they were in those letters. So
Yep.
yeah, and yeah, so I was like, okay, he's changed, and by the time our wedding anniversary came up, and then the school holidays, and his parents were sort of saying, oh, we can't really go on for this, having him stay with us. He'd moved back, and one of my conditions was he did the men's behaviour change program, and um, he learned a bit from that, and things changed a bit. Like there was a change, and then we moved house again, moved churches, because I just always wanted fresh starts. And then, yeah, you know, probably we'd moved to the area and about, that first year, something physical happened again. And I was like, I'd made this promise to myself and I told him if it happens again, that's it.
Yeah.
And then, I left to think about it and I was a bit shocked. And then he's crying to the kids saying, she's going to leave me, she's going to leave me. And then I get home, don't leave him, don't leave him. And, that was, he'd involved the kids in it. And that's what had happened the first time as well. Like the just lack of appropriateness and boundaries with the kids. And, and yeah, so I had to enact a plan the second time around that meant that I would stick to it. Like I made a decision that I would move out. Like lots of people can't understand that,
Yeah.
but like I needed to sign a 12-month lease so I wouldn't back out of it.
Yeah.
I needed to cut, I didn't cut contact for a little bit, but eventually I did. And I needed, I had a safety plan about the conversation. So my
Yeah.
sister flew down from an interstate to have the conversation to ensure that he left as well
Yep.
and that he wouldn't beg me to like relent and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to enact this plan to stay strong to that decision.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then by him staying in the house sort of meant that he wouldn't have that extra like level of so he could function, I suppose, as best that he could to be able to go to work and all that. So I had to think about that all the time because then if he couldn't, then he couldn't be there for the kids and he couldn't bring in a paycheck, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was lots of things, yeah.
And it sounds like like the previous, like his mental health and his vulnerabilities were part of what would draw you back in. And so, I imagine there's also a part of that safety plan of like, if he is there and he is like okay-ish, then it's more ability for you to stick to that plan that you were trying
Yeah.
to enact.
And I had to get to a point to make that decision, the final decision, that he could well,
Yeah.
die by suicide. Like I had to, he might have. I just have to do it. Like I have to think about the kids. I want to them to know that I'm making a stand about what isn't okay in a relationship, and hopefully, that they don't end up in those relationships.
Yeah.
So, like I see that movie ends with us. And I hope so, but really, with the impacts of it and what the script that was set for my kids and now, like, there's lots of fighting. They don't know how to get along, and there's
Yeah.
been lots of parentification, like from the other side and all that. So I just, maybe the best I can hope with is that it lessens, it reduces. I don't know if it will end. And recovery, like I discovered this book, it was amazing. Lundy Bancroft, I don't know why he does that. Inside the minds of angry and controlling men.
Yeah.
That was just amazing. Like he's got the playbook there, got
Yeah.
20 years of experiences with victim survivors and perpetrators in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that when some of the language that we were talking about earlier was really starting to land with you?
Yeah, yeah. And I'd also, in between the first and the second separation, had worked at a women's health agency that was also a family violence response service.
Mm.
And yeah, like so I learned a lot about it there, and I also learned a lot about trauma.
Yeah.
And so they were doing this trauma-informed work, and they were training all the staff. So I had
Yeah.
3 full days of training in it, and learning about the fight, fright, flight, freeze, fawn,
Yep.
all those ones. So and I'm going, wow, this is me all the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
now like I know, for example, like I can pick when trauma's happening, and when a fight escalates or something, or and I'll just remove myself, or I'll tell people to stop, but it doesn't really help with respect to being able to um, parent well when kids are fighting, because I just need to sort of deal with where I'm at in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I'm conscious of time, and I like to give people a bit of a picture as to like what is life like for you now? You know, you said that that separation happened in 2019, and so, that's a 5, 6 year window. And so, what is life like for you now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. Yeah. I've got a new partner, been with him for almost 2 years.
Beautiful.
He's not Christian, and I've sort of copped a bit of that from some friends, I suppose. But I'm like, well, I'm on my own faith journey. I call myself a progressive Christian now. I know a lot what I don't believe. I've got
Hmm.
to, landing on what I do believe is a lot harder.
Yes, I can relate. Most of the time I
Yeah,
sit in an I don't know space, so I
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, when the kids go to their dad, like they're getting the really, like he's become more conservative, and
Yeah.
that's hard. And, his parents and all that as well, like just that messages they're getting, that, um, and then navigating that, particularly with young boys
Mm,
and and adolescence, and then the social media and all that as well, and the manosphere and all that. So yeah, it's
yes.
hard. But yeah, for me, things are going really well. I'm on my own journey, and recovering, and yeah, I've gone on no contact. That's just the best thing for me. When the kids put the phone on speaker though, and I hear his voice. I just want to go somewhere else. And yeah, the drop-offs are at the top of the driveway, and yeah, like it just because a lot of things happened afterwards as well, like with COVID, and
Mm,
you know, anti-vax stuff happened, and not for me, but yeah, all that came into it, and you know, yeah, belief in conspiracy theories and all that. So there's been a much more of a chasm has opened up in between, like, my ex and myself, and the kids often say to me that I moderated him, or they can see that now because of, where he is now. So yeah, it's
yeah.
it's hard because like you got to keep parenting, like you got to keep. You can't like as I'm saying cut contact, but that's I still we've still got kids together.
Yeah.
It's still we've still got to pay for things for the kids, and so get the child support, all that, and try and keep in contact with the other side of the family as well, so that they have access to their grandchildren and
Yeah.
nieces and nephews. So yeah.
It's messy, right? I think a lot
Yeah.
of people think, you leave and it's, you reach a point of safety both physically and starting that journey of like personal, like internal safety. Um, but it's messy and
Mm, mm,
none of that is smooth, and particularly if the like you said, the chasm between you continues to widen, it just means more room for the messiness.
yeah, yeah.
It's tricky. Is I like to ask like what I mean, and you've already answered one of the questions that I usually, which is around your
Mhm.
own spirituality, but what would you say is like one of the top one or two things that have been supportive for you along recovering over the last few years?
Yeah. Being able to talk to people. I, I had a really good friend, she's still a great friend who, throughout, like, from the church that I went to now, like, she was one of my bridesmaids, and that I was able to disclose to her at the time. And, one of, after the first physical episode, after when we'd reunited, and I told her about it, and she's like, just encouraged me to leave. You don't have to, stay there. Like, so that was great, and I value, her in that. And so I've talked to people. I try and like within the church, like I'm on the church safe committee as well. Really, and I'm on a domestic and family violence working group for a Christian social justice organization. And for me talking, I've lots of people come to me now, like about, if it's them or if it's friends, like family members, for advice. And I don't shy away in naming abuse
Yeah.
and in being cross at the the perpetrators. I'm like,
100%.
and I just, I share with them, I just say to them, like, yeah, and like a lot of the things like people will say, in I suppose the secular world about, talk, don't say to women, why don't they leave?
Mm,
Um, and or why do they stay? But I really feel like in the church circles, or if you know people that are in those, the
mm.
message women need to be hearing is it's okay to leave.
Yes.
You can. Like, you're not gonna, um, like this whole God hates divorce, that, how that's been misused and the fear, and, it can be right fear of like social rejection and all that as well,
Mm,
from those circles. But, and, just that whole navigating like a separation and a divorce, like it's massive, like, no matter if you're in a church or not. So, yeah, I just think that whole it's okay to leave. And now, like, thankfully, we've got, the society we're in, and unfortunately, the terrible things that have happened. I think in Victoria, like Rosie Batty, that was a pivotal moment. And then, it was happening in Queensland with Hannah Clark,
yeah.
that those have changed the narrative
Mm,
in society, and there's still a long way to go, but like there's now services and all that, like, yeah, so recovery, and like there's still a lot that needs to be done for kids, and that's sort of starting to come out in the news more now, like Jess
yeah.
Hill
Yes.
and all that. So, I like really follow her. She's great. Yeah.
Yes, she is. Yes. And I love there is like a natural lead in, I think, now to what is usually my last question of these episodes, which is to offer some encouragement to people. But I'm wondering whether, like, what would you say to someone who is potentially sitting in a space where you have been? They're in a marriage, in a relationship, in the church, and there is, any form of intimate partner abuse, emotional, physical, verbal, all of the things. And what would you say to that person?
I'd say that it's like it is abuse. Like, don't minimize it. Like, and I'm not going to put that on the person either, that they're
Mm,
minimizing it, but just really acknowledge and sit with it and go, like, any moment of abuse, it is enough. Like,
mm,
you don't, like, forgiveness in an intimate relationship, I think it has to look different. Like, it's not about giving a free pass to the other person.
mm,
You can, and, like recovery can for them can look, and consequences, that can happen outside of you staying married. You don't have to, like,
yeah.
give them that out, I suppose. But yeah, just it's, you can put yourself first, put the oxygen mask on, and yeah, you're worthy. And it's gonna be seem really, really hard, and this massive thing, and hard to contemplate what life would look like.
Yeah.
Um, and I would encourage people to go to non-secular support services as well, like the 1-800 Respect.
Yeah.
Some churches are getting better, but
Yes.
and but I would not say with respect to response, and just like, you might get things, from them, good things in the support journey.
Mm,
I'm not going to say it's all going to be bad. There's lots of work happening in different churches around acknowledging this and doing better.
mm,
But the primary thing is to go to a non-secular service, like, call 1-800 Respect.
mm.
And it might be, they say people can be up to 7 times leaving.
Yeah.
For me, it was twice, and there are lots of things that, yeah, you might keep going back, and it's not on you for that. But it's okay to actually contemplate, that leaving, and it's not a reflection on your spirituality, You don't have, they're not all tied together.
Yes, I love that. They're not all tied together. I think that's such an important aspect of this as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story so openly.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's been great chatting with you, Sam. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Be on the Surface. If this episode resonated, challenged you, or named something you've struggled to put words to, I'm really glad you found your way here. You'll find ways to connect, learn more, and explore further in the show notes. As always, you are good, you have always been good, and your story matters always.